Hey everyone, it's Joe. Welcome to another episode of the Future Business Analyst podcast. My guest today is Paul Benn, a self-employed business analyst, a coach, a mentor, and a conference organizer of Capability Drive. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Hi, thanks, Joe. It's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I was surprised when you said I've got a voice, and I thought, oh, geez, I've never thought of myself as having a voice. So, yeah, thank you for inviting me, and it's good to see you again and be a part of what you're doing.
Yeah, no, it is nice. I appreciate you braving this pod. You know, it could be a little bit daunting, sort of trying to put our ideas out there, particularly for something as unknown as the future. So, yeah, I'm glad you're happy to have a spin of this, and we'll see what we come up with at the end of the episode. To start us off, though, tell me, how did you get into business analysis? What's your backstory?
I actually think the way I got into business is probably boring because it's probably the way that most of us get into business analysis, and that is by default. And that is I was working for Old Mutual in Cape Town
Okay.
as a portfolio administrator. Didn't have a clue about business analysis at that point in time, what it is, what it was about. And I was then asked to work on a project to implement a new reporting system
Okay.
from overseas. And then I essentially filled the role of a business analyst on that project together with a colleague of mine. And we implemented the project. We then went over to UK. Probably spent more time in pubs than we actually did in the office, but we got some work done, and then came back, and there was often say, "Well, we think you should be a business analyst." Like, okay, what is that? And then
Okay. Yeah.
that's how I got into it, and the more and more I speak and coach with people, the more and more I realize that I think it's the way the majority of us get into it. Um, it's not something that you go to uni and you learn.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a business. You go
Yeah.
study information technology or whatever, and then you end up later
Yeah.
on in life becoming a BA.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. Yeah, it is a sort of similar story for many of us. Interesting. I mean, I do quite a bit of sort of guest lecturing at universities, and I must say, I feel like that route from university to business analysis is becoming a little more trodden than it has in the past. But still, you're right. I feel like you either come from the left, sort of business into this profession, or you come from the right. You come from sort of, I don't know, a development or a test, sort of deeper down the SDLC and then into it. But yeah, it's often accidental, isn't it? And I'm assuming you were sort of SME slash BA. That was,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, essentially, I mean, I had become the SME on the project together with my colleague, and that's how we would then and moved across into business. It was only 2 years later that I actually formally went and did a qualification in business analysis at a company that I shall not mention in your
You're too kind. um,
yeah.
oh, tell me, how many years have you been in this game? What sort of numbers are we talking?
I actually was looking at it yesterday because I'm busy updating my LinkedIn profile, and it's 28, just over 28 years now.
Okay, 28 years.
With-
Right.
Yeah, and yet I'm still 16. Do the math.
Yeah, how does that work? But I mean, let's just say that's a chunk, right? That's a that's a good chunk. So, talk to me about the evolution that you've seen over that 28 years. I'm interested to hear your perspective on this. And the reason I say your perspective, it's because of that SME coming from business. Often when I speak
Yeah.
to people who've approached this profession from the other side, let's say programming or something, they describe it in a particular way. And I'm interested to see if you've got similar observations, having come from a sort of different source to them. What evolution have you seen?
That's quite an interesting question. I was hosting a podcast last week with Igor from Australia, and he was talking about specialization versus generalization, and it actually triggered the answer to this question actually, because when I started out as a business, I was an SME in reporting.
Okay.
And so I started out as a reporting specialist. That was what I was. The first 10 years of my career as a business analyst was reporting. That's all I did. Um, and I then went to go study at the nameless company and to be a business analyst. And that kind of sort of like opened my world a little bit more and say, okay, well, there's a lot more to this craft of business analysis than just me configuring a system, understanding what the users need, designing a report, putting it in place, and so forth and so on. But the problem was that I had become stuck in the role that I was in because I was seen as a reporting specialist, and that's all
Yeah.
I was seen as.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to be moved off anything else because reporting was their bread and butter. I then got an offer at a company called, back then it was called FinSource, it's now called Making Fund Services, and I think they've just changed their name again. But uh, I remember I've been 10 years at Almucho at that point and really kind of umming and ahhing. And I only mention it because I think this is really important for BAs out there when they think about their career progression. I remember my manager at the time, late Howard Smith, saying, Paul, if you don't put your resignation on my desk by the end of the day, I'm going to kick you out. I was like, what? Am I that bad? And he said, no. He said, no. If you want to grow, you've got to get out. You've got to go and experience the world. And so I then went across to making fund services, and I started working. I started working on reporting, but I got involved in other projects as well. And that was the move from specialist into generalization. And I think for the next few years, that's exactly what I did. I started to generalize and then start to spread out a lot more. In that process as well, starting Albucho, remember my background is not IT at all. I had no IT background.
Yeah.
I think the only IT I'd done at uni was computer systems. Remember those big floppy disks
I
used to
do.
stick in and stick out? That's what I got taught on that.
Yeah.
I did one programming course in COBOL. I never got it to compile. I handed it in. I said, I don't care. No. And but yeah, I'm not a coder.
Yeah.
I've got SQL skills, but that has been self-taught as I've gone along.
Yeah.
So once I've studied business analysis and I've got my certification, a lot of the skills I've learned is being just trying things and doing some sort of peripheral stuff and working out what works for me, what doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
I think the next big interesting change for me in business analysis was when Ryan Foster approached me to run the webinars in South Africa.
Right.
That was the next big step for me because uh, that volunteer process started and kicked off another aspect of my career because then suddenly I thought, okay, there's a lot more to what I already know. I thought I knew everything. There's a lot more to what I already know. And then the certification thing started to kick into me. Now, I don't say to everyone go and do certification. I think you got to have a really good reason and you got it for certification. For me, I knew I wanted to go into that kind of thought leadership where I can influence people in their careers. And so for me, certification was a way of getting a bit of that street credibility. Say, look, I've got something behind me, kind of understand the process, and together with all the experience, I can do this. And then that kind of kicked into the next process of opening up the international opportunities, which is when I made the point to move to New Zealand after I was made an offer in New Zealand. And I think that's also important because that evolution in my career kind of was sparked by a conversation with my brother who lives in New Zealand as well. And he said, Paul, stop thinking yourself as a citizen of South Africa, but as a citizen of the global world. And that was way before we had, with Teams and Zooms and having online meetings and virtual meetings was a big thing. It was, it was there, but it wasn't a big thing as it is now. And so that was interesting because as soon as I started to think of that, my whole sort of viewpoint of like, that I'll always work here, always be in this place, always in that will stay the same. And I think that's also led to me now being where I am today, in that I have become self-employed and I work across the world now. So, I do some work in Australia, I do some work up in Auckland and Wellington, and it's really become that bigger space for me to be able to use my talents in a particular way and to productize what I do, rather than be tied to a fixed role and a fixed system and a fixed way of doing things. So in a nutshell, I mean, I could go on this topic forever, but in a nutshell, that's kind of my progression where I've moved.
And everybody's journey is different. What I was sort of trying to bounce off, what I was trying to hear, sort of, I'm always interested about how people have seen business analysis develop, like over their careers, right? Because things do shift and change, but we all have different perspectives of it as well. And what I typically hear from the people who did start in programming is that they sort of perceive that this profession has moved closer to the business over the years, and I don't dispute that. I think it has. But then it's interesting to speak to you as somebody who came from the business, and like the little things that I heard you drop in there was like, I needed to get a bit more technical. I sort of had a dabble in COBOL. I know a little bit of SQL. So you got these people who are sort of moving across the one way, and their strength is technical, so they're trying to get that business. But for you, because your strength was business, you're trying to get that technical, which sort of shows that like the evolution of this thing is different for different people. And sort of where they came from, but one thing that you said in there, I want to sort of let's sort of pull this back now into talking about the future rather than the past, and perhaps the profession more broadly. I feel like you gave a great example of that, and you made me think of the word typecast. So when you were first employed and you were this reporting SME and you got pulled into business analysis and you were a business analysis reporting SME, right? And you were told to leave, but you were typecast, right? Do you think business analysts broadly are typecast? When you think about, what do other people think about the profession? Are we sort of stereotyped? Are we typecast as well?
I think we are typecast, but I think that typecast is coming from a misunderstanding of what we do. I'm not sure what it's like in South Africa. I haven't been, but one of the things that I've noticed here in New Zealand is that business particularly typecast as either documenters or let's bundle all these tasks that we haven't got time to do and give it over to business analysts. And what I am seeing, and it was interesting you made that comment, that business has been drawn, I'm seeing business has been drawn closer to the business than anything else. And I think there's a bit of a danger in that. Because if you're working on say like an IT related project, you kind of need to be in the middle between the two, because you need to be helping. And I'm not going to use that old cliche about the bridge, because I don't agree with it.
You just did.
But yeah, so we've got to kind of sit in the middle and be helping these two sides to come together and understand each other. And when we get drawn more to the business side, I think we kind of lose the focus of and the understanding of what's happening in the technical side. And I'll give an example of that. So we know that the next revolution that seems to be on the horizon is AI and all of that. Now, what the thing that's interesting to me is how many BAs are not actually picking up on that because they're so close to the business side that they're not got their eyes and focus on what's happening in the technology world that I can bring into the business and help the business with.
But don't, I mean, if I look at the kind of things that are posted about AI, it comes from a lot of people from a lot of different industries, a lot of different specialities. It could be marketing, for example, or, it could be somebody in a sort of manufacturing space. So I do feel that AI is probably something that is visible to everybody, I would suggest, and not just IT folk. Do you see it differently?
Oh, no! I don't see. No, I agree. That what I think the point I was trying to make is how few BAs are tapping into the AI. Think about that video that Fabrico posted.
Yeah,
We had that, and I'm not sure whether it was a staged or whether it was an actual chatbot, but it doesn't matter. The concept was there,
yeah,
and how he used that so effectively to use AI to help him as a business analyst.
yeah, yeah,
Now, what I picked up in that video is he didn't pass on his skills to an AI machine. He actually employed and used conceptual thinking. He asked questions. He used some observation of the data that came out. He had a systems thinking approach to it. He would like ask the chatbot, give me this kind of information and include the following and that. So he was still using business skills. He was just using the chatbot to be more effective in using the skills.
yeah.
Now, the thing is, what I'm seeing is that, and I've had a few conversations now. Interesting. One organization here in Wellington has banned the use of chat GPT
Yeah,
in organization. And um, the point is like, yeah, but we're scared of data loss and data breaches
yeah,
and all that. Well, yeah, okay, that is a real risk. But instead of banning it, how do we use it effectively and properly and safely?
safely. Yeah,
Um, yeah. So and in talking to other business analysts about it, a lot of them, no, well, I'm not using any AI, I'm not using any chat GPT, I'm not, because I think it's unethical and because I think it's not my work and all of that. And that's why I think that BAs need to kind of like really make sure that they're on tune with what's happening on the outside. You don't have to be technical, you don't have to be a programmer, but just understanding the concepts out there and the use cases and
mm.
how you could apply it within your current role. I think one of the things that's been very successful in my career is the number of different industries I've worked in.
Yeah,
And that is, so I've worked in defense, I've worked in health, I've worked in logistics, I've worked in banking, finance, investments, I've worked in health, I've worked in local government, national government, insurance, and that. But the one common thing is that I've found across all of them is that what I've learned from each of them, I can bring into the others and start to apply that knowledge.
yeah,
And it's the same concept. Yeah, it's being able to kind of look at what's happening in the AI space and say, what can I do within my organization to help me and the business? And coming back to, and I know I'm waffling a bit here, but to come back to your earlier comment about AI coming out of marketing and all that. And yes, 100% it should be. But also remember, you as a big business analyst, your fundamental role is to influence decisions.
mm.
I know the Bible talks about change, but if you really go down deep into it, it's about influencing decisions, about influencing strategy, about influencing people to take a direction, to make a decision. And so you should be at the forefront of that.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot in there. There's a couple of things I want to jump back to. Let's jump back first of all. I want to talk about you. You say you've worked in a number of different industries. I really like that.
Mm.
Something I can relate to. I have too, and I felt one thing it gave me was context independence. And what I mean by that is it actually doesn't matter what project you put me in, what industry that you put me in. I've sort of got the pure skills that I need to be able to do a problem solving job, an influencing a decision kind of job, an enabling change kind of job. Have you found as well that that sort of like having had that breadth of experience that it actually just almost just lifts up those core skills for you?
It does, and I've seen my role in this as part of the reason why I've gone independent and as a contractor. So because I found more and more that I've been brought in as almost like an advisor.
Okay.
You know, how do you think we should tackle this? How do you think we should solve this? How do you? What's your thoughts? Those are the typical kind of questions that I'm getting now, as opposed to in the past. Can you do a requirements document on the following, or can you find out what the requirements of this is? Now, it's more the question and the way I'm being involved is
Mm,
different. So, it's interesting that I do very little requirements document writing now, and more business analysis consulting,
yeah.
helping organizations kind of figure out their direction and that kind of stuff. And I think that not only because of the breadth of the industry that I've worked in and being able to apply different concepts across the industry, but also because of the years' experience I've got working
Yeah.
in the industry.
Yeah, but I want to be so bold as to say that, and I might not be making this as explicit for like this future business analyst kind of questions that I've been asking,
Mm,
but one of the things that does, I almost feel like you're saying it in a different way to what everybody else has said it. So, other people
mm,
have talked about, in the future there's going to be this place where the business analyst is that trusted advisor. And then what I'm hearing you say is you've reached that point where you're not really doing requirement specs anymore. You are
mm.
advising business on some of those higher level sort of, like a consultant basically. So then I'm trying to spot, well, what's the evidence then? What is it that Paul's done or Paul's doing to be able to reach that point where he has sort of positioned himself in that space? And I mean, I must say, I look at it and go, well, it's the amount of experience, isn't it? It's like you're not following a book, you're not following a methodology, you're not following a process, all that typical stuff that business analysis is in organisations. I've actually taken the best bits of that and I'm applying them independently
Yeah,
of the context. It's just like it doesn't matter what problem. I can walk into a room, I can help you solve a problem, no matter what the problem
yeah.
is. Is that what you feel?
That's what I feel, and I think it's less. Whilst the experience and behind me and the years experience does have relevance, I don't feel it's the top relevant thing, because I mean you can get a BA that's got just as much experience as me, but actually doesn't really know how to use that experience.
Mm, yeah,
Um, so I think it comes down to the work that you do. It comes down to connecting with people. It comes down to showing what your value is. And that's why I'm a very big supporter of knowing your value as a BA, knowing what you offer
yeah,
is very important. Um, uh, and it has a lot of like spin-offs from that, because when you know your value, you know what kind of job you can apply for, you can know what kind of culture you want to work in, and all of that kind of stuff. But um, to come back to the question about the future business and analysis, I think it's exactly that. I think it's where business analysts are becoming those trusted advisors, those people that employ um, tried and tested um, frameworks, techniques to come up with an answer. Um, I'm what I'm and I'm going to use an example for governments. I think is probably the one area where they haven't used business analysis enough. I would like to see either every minister in any government either having had business analyst training or worked as a business analyst, or have a business analyst, senior business that sits right next to them, who says to them, you're talking a bit of, what,
Yeah.
and helping them. Because I think in government, I mean, if you just think of some of the solutions the government come up with, I mean, like you think, what were you thinking? What, we were talking earlier about a project that I was working on before we recorded this. And that's the thing is that's where business analysts need to start. It needs
Yeah.
to go up to
Yeah.
the very top, to the people that are making policies, that we make the policies based off of the understanding of the right problem
Yeah.
and moving down to that. And also coming back to my early statement about business being about influencing decisions. That's where it starts.
Yeah. I'm laughing particularly at your government example. Many years ago, I had the fortune to go up to Harare to introduce business analysis to a bunch of guys in Zimbabwe, and that's where I met my dear friend Samuel Gazimbi, who's now with you in
Oh,
New
yes,
Zealand. New
yeah.
Zealand, Ryan Folster and I went up. Actually, you mentioned Ryan earlier, but
Mm.
Ryan and I went up, and I remember after the day, the feedback was like the entire room, sort of 30 people, said, "This is amazing. We can use this to change government and fix this country." And I mean, I'm used to hearing feedback like this would be great for processes, or we could fix that returns policy, or something at such a micro level. But it's wonderful that, we can actually use business analysis to solve some really big sort of structural, organizational, societal problems. Really, it does
Yeah.
have that power. I'm going to make a bit of a statement rather than a question here, because I've got another question that I've got in mind for you as well. But back to your sort of diverse experience. I read a book a couple of years ago by a guy called Franz Johansson, called The Medici Effect, and it's about innovation. And just broadly in that book, he sort of categorizes two kinds of innovation, and the world's calling out for innovation. And so I just want to pick up on this. He talks about progressive innovation and intersectional um, innovation. Progression is sort of the obvious one. It's like there's this, and then we can take it to there, and then we can move it up. Intersectional is when you take things from different areas and you bring them together. And I feel like that's what you were saying as well. And when you're saying you bring all these little bits and pieces from all these different industries, and you're
Yep.
connecting some dots that, and there's some dots that other people don't see there, right? Do you feel that gives
Yep.
you a little bit of a step up as well?
It is, and it is actually a fundamental BAE skill, being able to relate different pieces of information
Yeah.
and build new concepts and the ideas of that. And that's exactly what if you want to talk about the future business, is where I want to see BAs develop their skills, is being able to take different concepts and different ideas from their past and from other jobs and from even from other BAs and other industries, and say, how do I bring this information together, find the relationships between them, or even the where there's conflict between the information, because even in conflict you can find valuable information. Why is it in conflict? What do I learn from that conflict in that information? And then you start to build ideas upon the ideas, and that is really a fundamental business analyst skill.
Yeah.
It's and I think it's interesting. And I'm going to just kind of go back to what you were saying about when you went to Harare. About thinking that business was just a process. Um, yeah, I think that's a big fundamental shift that needs to happen. That business analysis is not just about process. It's
No.
not just about defining and modeling and doing a process. It's so much more than that.
Mm.
And I think if we want to again talk about the future business, we need to get away from this idea, oh, we just process modelers, or we just document writers, or we just define
Mm.
processes. We have so
Mm.
much more. When I just gave an example of being able to bring that information together and build new ideas and concepts off it.
Yeah, and I mean similarly, back to Fabricio and his video. What I loved it in particular was the use case itself, and the use case was a business use case. It wasn't like an IT systems analysis use case. It was actually impacting the business, experimenting. It was, I mean, he actually did a little sort of A/B test in that little mock example of a process in production. He touched production. He made a decision in production. He was that close to the business that he was influencing it. Right, like there and then. And I thought that was wonderful, because that really did actually, even in that elevated the BA role to aspire to so much more, I thought.
Yeah. And as you're saying that, I also realized, we're going back to our earlier conversation, is where does the BA sit, close to the business or close to IT? I think it was great that he was kind of sitting all that close to the business, but he kind of was independent, of both sides. We always say, don't look at the solution until you understand the problem. And it's the same thing here. Don't look at the business, don't look at the IT until you understand, because the business will sway you according to their expectations and their paradigms, and so will IT, particularly developers. Sorry, developers, don't mean to slight you, but they will slight you with the way things are possible and what you can do. And you kind of got to need to look at the problem or the need independently of all that, and that's, I think, what he did portray quite nicely in that video.
Yeah, he did indeed. I'm just gonna drop this one. I'm not even going to try and do any kind of smooth segue here, Paul. I'm just going to go to some of your answers, because I can see the time. I'm not saying we're immediately rushed, but I do want to make sure we discuss this before we go. Dropping the title.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think I think it's time for us to drop the title Business Analysis. And the reason why I say that is that it's not really about the title. It's about the skill to bring to the job. And it's about the business analysis skills, not about the role and the title that you have. And when you drop that title, it means you can slot into various different roles in different places and use your skills. And it kind of just broadens your total horizon and also your opportunity in the market to be able to work and apply skills. At the end of the day, I didn't become a business analyst because I wanted the title. I came to business analyst because it fitted my personality of analytical thinking very well. So I go for jobs that have a lot of that kind of skill set that I can use in it. So I think the titles are starting to restrict us, because you will see the job, I must have a business analyst and it must have this and that, whereas it's really about the skills. And then we can start to go, well, we can go work in the marketing department, or we can go work in government, or we can go work in the call center, or wherever. It's not about the role, it's not about the title, it's about what we have to offer, the value we have to offer.
Before the show, another thing we talked about was how I've got the easy job, and I'm now going to showcase that I've got the easy job by playing but curveballs, devil's advocate, like asking the hard questions, right?
Yeah.
But I want to start off by saying I don't disagree with you. Okay? I don't disagree with you. One, I don't believe that business analysts have a monopoly on business analysis, right? They are a set of skills that are, and these people are welcome to have them, right? Execs perform business analysis, business owners perform business analysis, politicians, like it is there, it's ingrained. People don't know they're doing it, right? They don't identify with it, but I'm happy that they do it, right? And I don't, as I say, we don't have a monopoly. So I agree with you, it's a mindset. I agree with you, it's a set of skills, a set of tools and stuff like that. But I just worry, like, what, or here's potentially what I might see, like, we're going to have a job title. So if we lose this one, like society, organisations are going to give us one, right? Like, you're going to have a job title one way or another. So then that might mean that we lose community. Like, if there's no business analyst job title, then there's no business analyst community, because there's nobody to sort of talk about that thing. You then end up joining another sort of community, because it will be the community of the job title that you're in, because there's equivalents of all these communities all over. And also, so that's one thing. I feel we'll lose a sense of community. We're going to have a job title anyway. But the other thing is, if people don't get us when we have got a job title, what hope have we got if we've got an invisible job title?
Interesting curveball. So I wouldn't expect anything less from you, Joe. So I think when I say lose a job title, I don't mean that we don't have the title of business analyst. I think what I'm really referring to is stop worrying about the job title. Stop worrying
Okay.
about whether I'm called a business analyst or whether and chasing after the job title and whether you're senior, lead, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't even. I very seldom even use the word lead or senior BA because I'm a business analyst consultant.
Yeah.
That's it. So I think, and I totally agree with you. If we do lose the words business analysis, we might lose a community.
Yeah.
Totally agree with it. So slightly refining my answer then, saying I think it's you're right. Let's not lose the word business analysis, but let's also not become hung up that we need to have this title and this role. Let's rather be more interested in the skills and the value that we offer, and then we can start to move into the areas that need it.
Yeah. I mean, what would be really cool is, like, let's say you do move into another job title, and then you start to do some cool stuff, and people are like, "Oh, I like that. What are you doing there?" You go, "Oh no, that's business analysis." Like, I'll tell you what I'm doing, but my job titles may be something different. So you start to identify the skill rather than identify the role. I think that'd be fantastic, because often you see people who are moving into a differently named job title go, "Well, what am I going to do as a business analyst?" It's like, well, you're not a business analyst. You're moving into a different role. That role probably requires some business analysis skills, which is why you're moving into it. But there's going to be some other stuff too, which is cool, right? More strings to your bow, bit more context experience, bit more context independence, and you start to grow, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm seeing that in my role now, where I'm bringing a skill, and people say, "Oh, what's that?" Okay, let's use that. I had recently on the project that I was working, I brought in a new kind of way of just looking at lessons learned in a retrospective. And whilst it wasn't new to me and it's not new to the business, that's what it was new to the business. But it's certainly kind of, and they've adopted that way of doing lessons learned. So that's an example. I think it's also here maybe good to mention, because we're talking about the future business analysis, is moving to productization and productization of your skills. So that's the area that I'm moving to, where I'm building products around my skills and offering that to my clients. So it might be a 6-month gig, or it might just be a 5-day, or it might just be a 1-day workshop that I use to give my skill, because then it makes me, again, a lot more versatile, that I can go in. They don't have to hire me for a full 6 months. They can hire me for a day, or they can hire me for a week. But it actually has opened a lot more avenue for revenue for me and for clients, being able to have that product that I can offer, or
Yeah.
products.
Products, yeah. You're talking about service thinking, aren't you,
Yeah,
surely?
yeah, yeah. It is business analysis as a service. Which, I mean, if you want to talk about the future business analysis, I think that's where we need to head to. So, again, forget about the permanent roles and all that. You want to kind of, if you really want to kind of move your needle in terms of your knowledge and your experience, you've got to move, and you've got to continuously move and go forward and not be stuck in one place. And I think that's kind of the message that came from that manager to me many years ago. Is like, don't get stuck in one place too long,
Yeah.
because you'll stagnate.
Yeah. No, that is so true. You back to typecast, stagnate. There's just little growth, and things will get frustrating. I think just to add on to what you said, I think service thinking is great for independents, for consultants. I also think it's probably going to be very good for people inside, because one of the things I've often thought about is that because business analysts are so versatile, right? Because we've got such a broad set of skills, we actually rarely repeat the same service or the same experience, maybe, for stakeholders. So I often wonder if stakeholders have difficulty in understanding what it is that we do, because actually we're inconsistent in what we do, because we've got the ability to do so much that it's not often that we do the same thing in the same way twice. So if we can start to bring in some consistency by defining services that we offer that are perhaps around outcomes and things, like this is the product that I'm going to give you at the end of this service, that might be a really interesting way to start to define business analysis into the future.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's certainly the way I've started now defining my practice as a consultant BA. Uh, so I've started building little products as service products around cybersecurity. I've built a product around outcomes based needs understanding, and so on. So it's you remember that progression of my career, like specialist generalist. I'm now going back into that specialist role again, where I've said these are the niche areas that I want to work in, and the reason why I'm doing it because I'm playing to my strengths and I'm playing to the value that I know that I can offer. I know in my answers to the podcast, one of the things I said, the world is changing so fast, and we can get caught up in this change, trying to understand every little piece and gather every little piece. And instead, we need to kind of sit back and say, okay, what is interesting to me? What adds value to me? What do I have a passion for? And start building your skills around that passion, rather than trying to be a know-it-all of everything. Uh, I get this a lot in the coaching that I do with aspiring BAs. And I had a client recently, and this person was all over the place, grabbing every little course that they could do. It was data analytics, it was this, and it was that, and we had to pull it back and say, like, hold on, what is your strategy? What is it that you want to offer as a business analyst? Then the structure,
Yeah.
what your knowledge base around that needs to be. And I think that's also important to understand, is that there's a lot out there, but you got to start finding where your niche is.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. The scattergun approach isn't going to be something that works. But I do get it. It's almost an act of desperation, because they're so excited to get into the profession that they figure they're going to hit something if they've got a broad array of things. So
Yeah.
it's funny. It's not as intuitive to think that you need to just pick that niche, but you do. But what a great point to end on, really. Like, find your passion, find your niche, build yourself up slowly, but towards some kind of goal that you got in place.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we finished already, Cheapers. I was just getting excited and
Just getting warmed up, will you? Yeah, like I don't actually time these exactly, but I know it's around 40, 45 minutes, maybe just over at the moment. So it probably is time to say thank you, Paul. I appreciate you joining me. I wish I could hang with you soon, but since you've moved to the other side of the world, it just makes that kind of thing a little less often. But maybe one day
well,
I'll get over.
I think you should come over for a holiday. If you haven't been to New Zealand,
I've not, no. Okay.
no, you need to come to New Zealand. There's a lot yet to experience in New Zealand. There's a lot of well, look, we're the land of the hobbits. You
No,
know,
habits.
um, uh, one of the film sets is just on the road from me here, where some of the Lord of the Rings were shot. So, yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
get
And
over, come over. And we'll probably be trying to do some in person conferences coming up. So
okay.
yeah,
Okay. That'd be
yeah,
interesting. I'll bear that in mind. I mean, actually, it seems like every month a really good friend sort of moves that way. So the number of people that I'm missing is just growing by the day. So yeah, there's a definite chance of that. But thank you, Paul. Nice to see you, and we'll chat soon.
Nice, nice, and thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it. Thanks.